Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing edition of the Double Dribble Show here on the Brew Sports Network. My name is Mitch Vomhoff, joined as always by my good friend and colleague Jimmy Carlton. Boy, is it a great week for sports. I mean, we're talking about, we got the Masters going on, Major League Baseball just kicked off, the NBA is winding down its playoff race, which we will get to in a little bit.
Aaron Rodgers and Olivia Munn broke up.
I wasn't going to bring it up on the show because I know that event has been covered very thoroughly on some other shows here on the Brew Sports Network. But yes, it is either a sad or a very happy day for Packers fans, depending on your perspective on whether professional athletes can maintain relationships or not. Mm-hmm. But yes, you're right. That's a very landmark day, and
it was all her fault.
Yeah, probably. I think that's the conclusion we're all going to reach. So, but Jimmy, how are you doing this week?
I'm good. I've gotten over my Rodgers and Olivia Munn sadness. Ready to talk some hoops. Ready to get into this weekend. I'm going to be in New York. I'm leaving tomorrow morning.
All right, big trip.
So I might go and do some scouting on the Knicks triangle offense and see how we think Jeff Hornacek's holding up. But I'll report. I'll have a full report when I get back.
Excellent. I await your breakdown because
it's a business trip.
I've been listening to people talk about the triangle for about 10 years now, and I still don't really get it. But hey, Phil Jackson's a wiser man than I.
1997. It's coming back.
1997. Yes. But don't worry, you don't have to be sad much longer. We're going to kick off the show with another example of why I love the NBA, really, because you get gems like this. Local TV ads featuring NBA players have been a joy for a little while. The Spurs have a legendary series with the retailer H-E-B down in San Antonio. And we have a gem coming straight out of Denver from their most improved player candidate, Nikola Jokic, which it's great. Just let's play this and we'll talk about it.
Why did tomato blush? Because he saw salad dressing.
Brilliant.
Perfect. It's this, and obviously, it's like an ad for a local car dealership or whatever. But
his delivery is exactly what you want. He's a gigantic Serbian fellow, and he is deadpan, and he smacks a toy truck out of the way. I actually brought my own lame dad joke.
Yes, yeah. We should say this is the.
I don't even know if we can call them dad jokes
style.
anymore. Like, are dad jokes dead now that Nikola Jokic has just taken over?
I don't.
Are they now just going to be referred to as 7-foot Serbian basketball player jokes?
I would refer to Nikola Jokic as my dad, so we can say that's still, even though he's technically younger than me. Whatever, my giant European basketball dad has good jokes. So yeah, but you were moved by this spirit.
I was, and in honor of my dad, we can call this one a dad joke.
Sure.
Anyways.
Yeah. Shout out.
It goes a little
Mr.
something
Carlton.
like this. What goes ha 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 thump?
I don't know. What goes ha 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 thump?
A man laughing his head off.
Shout out, Mr. Carlton.
We got some audio drops to put in there. Studio audience cheering and deliriously laughing and happy.
It's just the sad trombone. That's all it is.
So, anyways, that's
all right,
that's how we're starting today. It's a Friday.
And honestly, all right, there we go. Thank you to our studio audience. Woo, very good.
I'll be here for the next 45 minutes or so, not all night.
But honestly, like I said, like this is part of the reason we love the NBA, and we've talked about it before. But it's just these guys know how to have fun, and like there are silly commercials in other leagues, but between the deep scoop on peanut butter and jelly we had a couple weeks ago, between silly commercials, it's just the NBA knows how to have fun with itself, and I really appreciate that.
It's never been more fun than down the stretch. It's funny to say like we're at the end of the season because we're at the end of the regular season. We've still got 2 more months of basketball. We've got a lot more to dive into and to keep people's interest, but we are now in the last week of the regular season.
Yeah, it is, playoff chases are winding down. We have most of the playoff seeds decided, but a little bit of mess that we're going to get into in a little bit. But first, we have a couple of headlines that I pulled that I really want to talk about. First off, last week we mentioned that I really love milestones. We talked a little bit about the first free agency rumor, which was Gordon Hayward going to Miami. which is really silly at this point of the year. Obviously, when we still the Jazz are going to go into the playoffs, they're not even out of it yet. There's no reason for Gordon Hayward to think about leaving. But it was a milestone, and this week we have another milestone that really speaks to me that I've utilized heavily in the past, but maybe not so this year.
You're a big fan of this.
I'm a huge fan of the NBA lottery, and ESPN this week put up their official lottery simulator. So you can go to ESPN.com, look it up, and run the numbers as many times as you want until your lottery-bound team comes up with number 1 and Markelle Fultz.
Right. Interactivity is huge. You got to have an interactive element when you're a media behemoth like ESPN. They saw the success over the last 10 years of the trade machine. Mm-hmm. They're like, people love this stuff. Let's just keep producing stimulating machines at some point there's going to be like the collective bargaining agreement machine, and we're just going to, we're all becoming robots basically.
Yeah, I eliminated the salary cap just to see what would happen. Yeah. Stuff like that. But I love this thing, and obviously as someone who has followed the Milwaukee Bucks very closely in the last couple of years, the lottery machine has gotten heavy usage from me, I would sit through hundreds and hundreds of cycles until
finally... Can you tell people a little bit about how it works? Yeah,
so basically the lottery machine takes each team's odds each team's number of ping pong balls as it happens in the real NBA lottery, calculates those into a percentage chance that you're going to get a given position in the lottery, first, second, third, all the way down to 14, 15, and then just rolls those numbers and to see what happens. And it's a great way to pass the time, because if you're looking at things like, well, if you're like me, it's a good way to pass the time, let's say. But it's a good way to look at so the Lakers own a pretty heavily talked about protected top 3 pick in this draft. And if it ends up outside of the top 3, then the Philadelphia 76ers get it. So you could see what happens if the Sixers end up with. And this actually happened to me on my second roll today, where because of course I was playing the lottery machine, but where the Minnesota Timberwolves, shout out to my Timberwolves friends, ended up with the number 1 overall pick, and the Lakers slid down to number 4. So you ended up with a situation where the 76ers get back-to-back picks at number 4 and number 5. And so it's really great to see an illustration of kind of how the lottery can play out. And while they don't really vary who they're projected to be picked at that point, it's still super interesting to see all the permutations that can occur.
Well, and you can find mock drafts galore elsewhere, even if they aren't connected to the lottery simulator.
Yeah, totally.
The interesting thing about this lottery simulator, all jokes aside, is that it's unique with the NBA that they've been able to build this cottage industry, a sub-industry within the draft, right? Professional sports, nobody owns the draft like the NFL draft. It's this huge production. It's this huge event. It's a moneymaker. And, MLB and NHL a little less so. But with the NBA draft, with the lottery component, there's a subsidiary of the NBA draft, which is the lottery, that drums up all this excitement and attention and focus and planning, even in advance of the actual draft and the selection of the players. So ESPN obviously capitalizing on the fact that people are going to go nuts and be excited about the lottery, which is just, as you said, picking up ping pong balls out of a machine. Mm-hmm. Why not give them?
It's
something?
Like bingo night at the VFW. I mean, when you break it down, really. But yeah, totally. And I actually do have to give a shout out to Tankathon.com, which is kind of the original lottery tracker. Those guys were doing it even before ESPN. So if you really want to see all the detailed stats, the updated tanking rankings, go to Tankathon.com. Those guys are great.
Good way to keep fans and teams that are terrible somewhat relevant and interesting going down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, totally. And there's obviously the debate that people have all the time about teams tanking and trying to secure that best draft spot. But yeah, if you want the up-to-date information, that's where you go.
One team not tanking, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
They sure aren't. The Thunder are headed for a playoff spot. And
they're doing anything but, at least one guy on that team is doing anything but not trying to win.
Yeah. Russell Westbrook, obviously a guy we've talked about, MVP candidate for sure. Almost a lock to average a triple-double this year. Also almost a lock to beat Oscar Robertson's triple-double record, which he's currently tied for, and he fell 1 rebound short the other night against Memphis.
Put this on the coaster.
Ooh, oh yeah, it's coaster delivery. The production team here at Brew Sports, top notch.
Yeah, so there's been like a narrative that's emerged, and I feel like it's just over the last.
A couple of videos came out this week of people illustrating a concern that some people have had, or a knock that they've had against Russell Westbrook, right?
Right, for allegedly padding his own stats.
Yeah, and the way this is kind of illustrated in that is that on plays like an opponent's free throw that they've missed, where the bigs for Oklahoma City might box out but not try for a rebound and let Westbrook swoop in and grab that to help him secure the statistics to reach his triple-double.
So people that have been listening and watching our show know that I am firmly in the Russell Westbrook MVP frontrunner camp. I don't need to dredge up all those old arguments. I still believe that he has done nothing to change my mind on that. So in that context of this alleged stat padding, and specifically it comes up, nobody lobs accusations of stat padding when he goes for 46 because his team needs every single basket in order to win a game to stay in the playoff race. It's mostly just the rebounding, right? Like they see guys boxing out and he swoops in, like you said. The counter argument to that is really simple for me because from a basketball perspective and from just a logic perspective, and the Thunder have said this themselves, the best way to transition from defense to offense and the best way to get out and run for a team like the Thunder that likes to get out and play fast is to have the ball already in the point guard's hands off of the defensive rebound. So it's really the best way that they can initiate their offense is to have him already holding the ball. So, sure. And the other aspect of this argument is the fact that people really aren't used to seeing somebody like Russell Westbrook, who's just a superhuman, do what he does. Like, he missed a free throw the other day and got called for a lane violation because he grabbed his own rebound on the follow, and you can't do that. He'd already left he'd already crossed the free throw line after shooting, and it's like, well, Russ, that was pretty incredible, but you're not allowed to do that. Like, people aren't used to seeing not only what he's capable of, but what he is doing because of, like we're going to get into rest and sort of taking it easy, and you're not going balls to the wall every single game. Russell Westbrook doesn't care about any of that. He plays. I think that the argument that he's stat padding is by people who are against the narrative of him being the MVP, or that just don't think that, I don't know, this notion of him being selfish or whatever. Like it just seems to be sort of misguided and like curmudgeonly to me.
Yeah, and I mean, the salient point that was kind of brought up that I saw this week was that a lot of big men in the league, a lot of centers, a lot of forwards kind of pad their rebounding stats in a similar way of like just catching those loose balls off of free throws or whatever. And like it's totally fine for them to pump up their rebound numbers, which matter for them when you're talking about a dominant big man. Part of the measurement is how many rebounds that guy's grabbing and how he's cleaning up. And no one ever brings it up for them.
Well, and if the 6'3" guy who everybody knows is gunning for every rebound and every single counting stat because it's clearly important to him and because it's part of this larger conversation, if you can't get it from him, then sorry, he deserves every board that he gets.
Yeah.
He's not standing there at 9'4", averaging 50 rebounds a game, like just because he can grab the ball off the rim. Like he's earning all the boards. And thus ends my latest weekly Russell Westbrook diatribe.
This has been Jimmy Defends Russell Westbrook for the 5th consecutive week.
The real hot take on this, that Russell Westbrook is a good MVP candidate.
I don't know. We're going to fight about this. No. Yeah, I know. I mean, and for the record, I'm also still on the Russell Westbrook is going to get MVP train. It's just the allure of the triple-double is too much. If you want to argue that those are arbitrary numbers because they're round, like that's fine, but...
We've cared about stats for the entirety of sports.
Yeah.
We can't stop caring about sports stats now just because somebody's doing something that we, for 40 years, was like, this is incredible, it's unprecedented, there's no way somebody can do this. And now it's like, well... it's just a rebound and a half more than James Harden. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. We've been counting stats in that way forever.
Yeah.
It is a number that matters, just like in baseball having 500 home runs or 300 wins. Like, these numbers matter because we've given them meaning. He's doing it. There's no reason to knock him for it now retroactively.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on a little bit. This is a little note I had because I got to watch the NBA sidecast on ESPN the other day, which is basically, I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with the True Hoop network, which is ESPN's blog network. They had a couple, probably 4 or 5 of the kind of longest lasting alumni of the True Hoop network, kind of in a picture-in-picture setup, along with the Milwaukee Bucks versus Oklahoma City Thunder game, and just kind of having guys like Brian Windhorst, Rachel Nichols, Tom Haberstroh, a couple guys like that, commenting on the game while it was in progress. And I personally think that's a super interesting way to kind of provide commentary in a different manner than just the normal the normal play-by-play and color guys do. But just wondering, Jimmy, if you caught any of that and kind of what your thought is on a new package for the basketball broadcast.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I know about it, and I sort of understand the thrust of why ESPN's doing this, and I think it's part of a larger theme with broadcast networks trying to offer, sort of trying to round out their content and their offerings as much as possible. You know, if people want #EmbraceDebate, you got a full debate and argumentation and whatever and analysis into that broadcast. The NFL has experimented with this. We've had this with the NCAA, with bowl games. We've had this in soccer where. Especially with ESPN, where they have their family of networks, they can have these subsidiary channels that, and I know this is not that because it's not broadcast, but they can sort of provide auxiliary content around the main game. And I've never really been drawn to it myself. I don't really ever find myself like watching the Super Bowl sideshow where it's just a bunch of guys sitting around a table talking about the game that I can be watching. But I understand the need for it. And I understand that some people are interested in it and want that extra avenue into the game.
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was a super interesting experiment, and obviously as coverage of sports kind of gets more casual, I mean, we just end up with like dudes like you and me sitting here in button-downs and T-shirts instead of wearing suits at an actual like news desk. It's kind of an extension of that trend in the kind of the blog culture, the informal nature. And I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, I caught about the first half of it and went back and watched the rest of it afterwards. And there's just a way you just kind of get more insight and you get more personality in something where you just have some people hanging out on couches talking, and talking about the game, but not necessarily just relaying the play-by-play to you because you can watch the game. I mean, if you're watching this, you are seeing the game happen, so you can kind of listen to commentary instead of just having someone tell you, Westbrook grabbed a rebound, he's running down the floor. It's a little bit more freeform than that, and I really appreciate it.
It's a nice offering, and I'm glad that it's available if you seek it out. What we don't want, I mean, I think it's good to keep that separate from a broadcast because we saw, I don't know if you watched the game with TNT, they've been experimenting with having sort of players come in and do play-by-play. And last week we had Brent Barry and Derek Fisher doing the play-by-play of an entire game. Usually it's part of a game or they've got a play-by-play guy with a couple extra analysts or color guys. And, I mean, I love Brent Barry, but there's a play-by-play guy who's a host who's been doing it for a long time on national television for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously things best in moderation, but I would encourage everyone out there, if you like watching basketball and you're interested in kind of seeing it in a different way, maybe seek out the NBA sidecast. It's available on ESPN. If you have a cable login, you can certainly do it online as well. But I think it's really interesting and something that I want to watch, or I would prefer to watch going forward, honestly. Next up, I just wanted to bring this up a little bit. Obviously, we are reaching the deadline for early declarations for the NBA draft. We've seen a lot of the big names, obviously already declare. A lot of the top 10 guys from college are already said, no, listen, I'm going to declare. Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, obviously. Even guys, some guys even outside of. I'm just looking at Draft Express's top 100 and their list of early entrants.
Yeah, all of Kentucky has already declared.
Yeah, everyone who plays for Kentucky is going up for the NBA draft. Who'd have thunk it? But I just wanted to see, Jimmy, if there was any interesting omissions, anybody who's kind of going back to school that surprised you. I know for myself, Bruce Brown, who's a shooting guard out of Miami, kind of projected to go right around the end of the first round, early second. But decided to go back to school for his next year, presumably to improve his stock. kind of caught me off guard a little bit because my general feeling is that if you are in college and you have a good shot to be drafted in the borderline first round, maybe in the second round, my inclination is always just to say, hey, go for it. You can improve your stock in the NBA just as much as you can improve it in college. But was there anybody for you, Jimmy, that kind of caught you off guard?
Another freshman guard. Another freshman. He's a center for Duke. Marcus Bolden was the guy that stuck out to me of the guys that have already decided they're returning to school. There's obviously a number of big names, relatively big names out there that are undecided at this point because they're underclassmen. They want to keep their options open. There's unless you're going to be a lottery pick, there's no harm in just sort of testing the waters, going to the combine, seeing what people think you're going to go. But for me, that guy is Caleb Swanigan, the big man out of Purdue. He, production-wise and ability-wise, has shown he's clearly an NBA player. Perhaps an NBA player from perhaps an outdated or anachronistic NBA player from a different age.
Kind of a traditional post-up center.
Yeah, definitely a very old-fashioned sort of post guy. But he's proven that he can play and be a difference maker. He's best player in the Big Ten. I would be surprised if he doesn't come out as a sophomore. That's sort of like that last. If you know you're good in a potential first rounder. Yeah. I think you lose your luster wears off a little bit if you go back for your junior year and then you're sort of this upperclassman and there's that sort of anathema to NBA scouting.
Yeah, that's that's actually kind of where I think we talked about this on one of the shows that I guess earlier in the week, but that's kind of where the scale tips, because as teams are looking at focusing so much on extreme youth in the prospects that they draft, because they're like, we just need the youngest athletic dude, and we can turn him into an NBA player as he comes through our system. They start to have a couple more questions about older guys, which is why I think guys like Josh Hart out of Villanova, Frank Mason out of Kansas, even though Frank Mason is probably like National Player of the Year, he's a borderline draftable player at this point for a lot of people because he's already 23 years old, 4-year player at Kansas. A guy who like probably has the skills to play in the NBA, but everyone's looking so much at upside that his stock just kind of fell off by virtue of him being so old.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is a little bit sort of localized and inside Wisconsin sports, but I think these names are well enough known. I mean, Malcolm Brogdon, who we've seen all season for the Bucks, comes out
the same thing.
Yeah, comes out at 23, 5 years in college, and he's extremely polished. He fell to the second round probably because of that reason. I mean, his draft stock dropped because he was older. There wasn't much upside. There wasn't much that we didn't know about him, and he's been exactly what this Bucks team has needed. Another guy, Wisconsin Badger, Frank Kaminsky, another guy that spent 4 years at Wisconsin, became the Player of the Year, became a first-round pick, and has been a legitimate contributor for the Hornets. He's a good NBA player, borderline starter. I wonder if, like, sort of in the NFL, the way guys like Drew Brees and later on Russell Wilson sort of changed the understanding or the prejudice against short quarterbacks in the NFL and just drafting them was completely a waste of a pick. Those guys have started to change that, and I wonder if that's going to happen in the NBA, especially when you're later end of the first round, where these teams just need somebody who can come in. They don't need him to be a three-year project with a lot of raw skill. They just need somebody that can fill a role and sort of know your place on the team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of in the same way that teams have trended towards taking a lot more risk on European players in the last couple of years. I mean, obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo was the prototype for unknown European dude that we're going to bring over. But then you got guys like Kristaps Porzingis, you got Jokic out of Denver, a ton of European guys that the team suddenly feel like, oh, we were more comfortable taking a shot on that guy. And it's certainly kind of one of those trends that there rises and falls. So I think we might actually see more of a swing towards teams feeling comfortable taking older players when they see guys like Brogdon or Kaminsky come in and make an impact even as an older player.
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch the professional sports trends as they play out and sort of see, especially with how intellectual and advanced the front offices have gotten in different sports. I mean, Moneyball in baseball, and then that's already worn off. That was 10, 15 years ago that this was like this brand new approach to evaluating baseball talent, and that's already sort of like gone by the wayside because everybody's doing it. So it's interesting to see how the NBA adapts and ebbs and flows in terms of how they evaluate players and what value they give them, and it'll change for sure within the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. I want to move on now a little bit to we'll talk about a couple of kind of end of season headlines, topics. The first one obviously being one that has pretty major playoff implications, that the Cavaliers, with the end of action last night, moved into a 95% chance of securing the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, so virtually a lock for them to maintain the number 1 seed. And then we also have the Golden State Warriors, who have locked in a number 1 seed in the West. The question I want to pose to you, Jimmy, is, are we just kind of guaranteed, or are we just on the clear track for another Cleveland Golden State Finals matchup?
I think Cleveland's got a path. I mean, that you can punch their ticket just like always. It was sort of funny for that week or two when Boston had beaten them, and then Boston had moved into the top spot, and there was like all this consternation, and rightfully so. Like as we said last week, I think we both agreed this. Like the Cavs are only a LeBron-led team is only guaranteed to be in the finals. Guaranteed until they aren't. Like at some point that's going to run out, and that era will end. But he's playing so well. He clearly, like especially this week, just decided to flip the switch against Boston and was like, after saying this is a regular season game, I don't really care about it, and then decided to go out and just be the most dominant player in the world. In the West, though, as always, it's going to be a dogfight. I mean, last year the Thunder were up 3-1 on the Warriors. And we almost didn't have the Warriors going back to the finals even after being the best team in NBA history. Like the Spurs are always there. The Spurs, and the thing with the Spurs is like they're cagey enough that like we were laughing about Tyronn Lue last week, saying that he has this secret sauce
plan
for fixing the defense. And for the most part, I laugh at that because it's like, no, you just sort of figure it out, and then you retroactively can assign praise, or you can point to that and say, "See, I told you." But with the Spurs, because of Pop and just the culture and what they've been doing for 20 years, you assume that they actually, if someone does, they're cagey enough to have a plan or to kick it up a notch and show something in the playoffs that they didn't before. It's hard to see anybody in the West besides those two teams in the finals. But at that point, I think it's a toss-up. And I mean, we got Kevin Durant's going to be coming back. We'll talk about that. But the West is going to be an interesting side, because then you got Houston, who just plays. They're a matchup nightmare because they play so fast and they shoot so many threes. If they're making their threes, they can probably outshoot the Warriors, which is hard to believe or hard to think about. They've certainly they broke the record for most threes in a season this year.
Yes, they did.
But in the East, I can't see anybody stopping the Cavs when the Cavs decide that they are going to be playing in the finals.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we are going to have some interesting playoff matchups in the East. Another thing that, we're going to talk about in a minute. But there are definitely going to be good matchups there. But it's just you can't ever bet against the LeBron team. I mean, there's 6 years of history saying the LeBron-led team is going to make it to the finals, and I don't really see a good reason why something would happen or would be different now. Obviously barring some sort of catastrophic injury. But even like when they did it a couple years ago without Kevin Love, and LeBron can put a lot on his back. So I they're
starting to get healthy. It's the Cavs.
Exactly, it is the Cavs. We do have a actually related question coming up in the questions from Mike, who says
on our Facebook,
on the Facebook live feed that we are on right now. Question from Mike: do we think that Larry Sanders is going to play a big role in Cleveland during the playoffs, especially now that Tristan Thompson is dealing with a hand injury?
Yeah, he's got a thumb injury. I'm going to just basically set you up for this because I know you love talking about Larry Sanders.
You know me so well.
Larry Sanders went from almost playing the D-League to then having to play for the Cavs because they needed the body. He was out of basketball for 3 years. 2 years now, he's back. Do we think that he's going to make any difference in a playoff series? Do we think the Cavs need him to make a difference?
I need to preface this by saying that I love Larry Sanders. This has been documented. If you've followed me on Twitter for any number of years, Larry Sanders was definitely a favorite of mine. But it's just so hard for me to see a guy coming from the troubled spot that he was in. He had a couple of up and down seasons at the end of his Milwaukee tenure, and then stepped away and seemed pretty content without basketball. To all of a sudden come back in and make an impact with the Cavaliers. And even, granted, they probably are going to hold him until the playoffs and get him more time to integrate into the team. But he's not playing hardly at all for Cleveland. And I just really struggle to see where he's going to show up. And he totally could have one of those vintage Larry Sanders, like, I put up 7 blocks and 8 points because I can't catch a ball.
And he doesn't need the ball to make a difference, which is the only reason why I think he knows his role, and he knows on that team they don't need him to do anything besides board and block. But I agree with you. I just don't think that they barely used Mozgov last year. He's obviously a very different defensive player. I don't think they need him to have a big role, and he's as much as I love Larry Sanders, and this isn't a commentary on his psyche or his anxiety, the things that let him out of basketball. But he is a liability. He doesn't always, he's liable to get ejected any game. And in the playoffs, I think there's just less margin for error. If you don't know the playbook, if you don't know your role, you don't know your defensive responsibility, whatever it is, there's just more liability there.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. And I'm not going to rule out a dominant performance like he once had, but it's just real tough to see with the complications that we outlined.
Yeah.
But I do want to shout out Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Who asked it for me, and I really appreciate that. Also shout out to Grant, who is still asking me for more Steph Curry. Aaron and Baxter hanging out in the comments. Really appreciate having you guys here.
So Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, had a news conference today coming off of a Board of Governors meeting. So basically a planning meeting with the people that make the decisions in the NBA and rules and protocols. And actually a really interesting one. A lot of news came out of it. Adam Silver is one of the most transparent. He's very open about what he's trying to do with the league. I know you have thoughts about one area in particular that he has been addressing. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but now with a little bit more information.
I have.
To rest or not to rest?
To rest or not, and this is a topic that has been
legislated.
This is a topic that has received much discussion over the last couple of weeks. I know in our pre-show when I stopped on the happy hour the other day, we were talking about this a little bit in terms of whether or not teams should rest their stars, when they should rest their stars, if any sort of mandate should be made about when they rest their stars. You guys, I'm getting real frustrated with this notion that the league needs to intervene and tell teams when they can rest players and when they can't, because it's a lot of people, probably rightfully so, view the NBA as kind of an entertainment product, right? In that the argument is made that when I go to a game, I'm going there to see these stars, and the team might even be marketing these stars to me as someone I want to go out and see. And so when a guy like LeBron James rests, or even when the Cavaliers rest LeBron, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love all at once,
especially in those situations,
you might feel robbed or cheated of the experience that you were sold, or the experience that someone said you were going to have. Someone on a marketing team put up this thing. Hey, come see, especially if you're a fan of the other team, and this is your chance to come see LeBron James play at the FedEx Forum in Memphis or whatever, and you only have one shot to see him. And I do get that. I understand that people want to go see stars, but I personally see the league as a competition product, not an entertainment product. And as a part of that, I really do firmly believe that teams need to do what is best for them to compete. That when you look at the long term, the best move for the Cavaliers is to have LeBron James fresh and healthy for the NBA playoffs and not risk him being hurt in a relatively meaningless regular season game. So fans can totally be disappointed. I get that. You want to see the stars play, but myself as a fan, I want to see the stars play in the most meaningful games, which are the ones in the playoffs, which are if Cleveland gets to the finals. I want to watch LeBron James play in the finals all the time, because as last year's finals showed, he goes to even a completely different level than he does when he takes over in the regular season. And so to look at something like this and say, well, the league needs to legislate that teams can rest players at this point and not at this point, or not for nationally televised games, or one of the ideas that was bandied around was that teams can only rest their stars for home games. For me, it takes away from the competitive or the strategic experience that each team should have, the individual responsibility and strategic planning that teams should set their strategies, like what they want, what they believe is the best chance for them to succeed at the highest level and achieve their goal, which is obviously a championship. And just, don't interfere with that.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with you to some extent. I don't think it's an overreach. I think that right now, the tenor and sort of the fever pitch of the conversation has reached a point where obviously the NBA needs to address it, because they can't just sort of say this isn't, like what you're talking about, that this is a competitive issue. It's not an entertainment issue. If the Cavs want to do what's best in their self-interest, then they should be allowed to do that. They're their own entity within this league. Greg Popovich has come out and said, I'm in the business of winning games, and there's science behind doing this thing. Fair enough. But you're still selling this product, right? The fans and the TV and the ticket money is still what is propping up this incredibly huge, vastly, money-making, huge revenue, and growing sport. I don't think that you can ignore it, and I think what Silver's done a good job of is addressing it and sort of trying to find a compromise, because there has to be some kind of give, because fans are mad, and you don't want to get to the point where you seem so arrogant and above the opinions of fans that you just let the teams do whatever they want, because teams care about their fans, but teams don't really care about this conversation because they don't have to, because the commissioner, there's no rules. They're playing within the rules. Now, what?
I think to really understand this, we have to have this. There has to be some sort of divide drawn between the part. So teams kind of have two goals, right? So there's the competitive part of the team that is like, we are here to do our best at basketball, and there's also a component of a team that is, we are marketing this game to our fans, and it also works, at the league level too, of like the league is trying to produce the most competitive product it can, and also pitch it to fans. And I totally get that. But I think asking the competitive part of the league to serve the marketing part of the league, for me, kind of, you're starting to risk lessening the competitive part of the league to serve the marketing arm.
Without the marketing arm, that competitive arm doesn't really matter. You're not playing to sold-out stadiums and having these multi-billion-dollar TV deals, and the players aren't making, role players aren't making $15 million a year. I think the league is growing, and the league is extremely profitable. The league has done a lot of things right, and the things that bother me, because I agree that you shouldn't step in so much that you say LeBron can never rest. At that point, we're just going to have, it's going to be like the NFL. It's going to be like the Patriots in the NFL, where we're going to have these non-injuries and these phantom injuries and guys getting shut down with like a broken toe, that, whatever. But I do think that there needs to be an understanding that fans should have a say in this league. Like, fans are paying money. Fans are contributing to the growth and success of this league. And I don't want to be fed, if I'm complaining as a Bucks fan, that
sure.
I didn't get to see LeBron when he came to Milwaukee. I don't want to hear in response, well, this is going to extend LeBron's career 5 years. I don't really care. I came and I paid for my ticket, and maybe I brought my family for that one game. I want that experience. And is that selfish and is sometimes unrealistic? Sure. But there should be protocols in place that ensure that it's not automatically all the time. Fans have to wonder, am I going to see this NBA team with its NBA players tonight, or is it a total risk for $80 a night?
Yeah, and I think we'll get to a point where if this actually bears out to be. Here's my other thing, is that I don't necessarily believe that this is a lot more than just some people being mad online. I would be interested to see if
sort of how customer service works, though.
That's true, but I would be interested to see if actual ticket revenue or revenue from stadiums begins to get affected by that. Because the most effective way to voice your concern with any product is to affect its bottom line. And this is overall consumer advice for you, the viewer at home. But yeah, no, but I think if you're mad about it and you really want the league to pay attention and take action, don't buy tickets to a game where LeBron is resting, or or only buy tickets to games that you know. And yeah, you're gonna have to do a little bit more work in like actually maybe paying attention to it instead of just looking at the marketing message that a team puts out and says, "Hey, come see the Cavaliers and LeBron take on your Milwaukee Bucks or your Memphis Grizzlies or whatever." Like you're gonna have to do a little bit more research, but if you're a tuned-in fan, it's pretty easy to tell. Like, and even a day or two before, it's pretty easy to tell that these players are probably not going to be playing. And yeah, then don't go to the game and tell them, "Hey, I'm not going to put out money for this."
Yeah, the league is extremely profitable. It's growing. It's doing a lot of things right. I think one aspect of marketing that isn't just transactional about whether is this affecting our bottom line. Obviously, it's making as much money as it ever has. Their bottom line is not being affected by these people who are upset or this feeling. Is that you don't do things that are consumer and customer unfriendly. And I think to just ignore that the people have these feelings, a lot of people do, and that even beyond people complaining or tweeting about it or emailing or whatever, just voicing their opinion, it's a problem. If LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love are all healthy and are all sitting out, and you have a product that is putting out that is extremely superstar driven and is ostensibly to entertain and to play basketball, people on a basketball court, if those guys aren't doing it and they're able to, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on the perspective of the person. Like, I'm obviously fine with it because I'm more interested in the bigger picture of an NBA playoff race than maybe in an individual game. So, but I'm also not out here buying tickets more than a couple of days before a game because I want to know like what the clearest picture of what's going on is. So, yeah, I can understand the typical fan argument. I just really would be upset. Yeah, I'm not smarter than anyone else. Like, don't.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But one thing Adam Silver did say that they are trying to do is eliminate the 4 games in 5 nights. Players have a huge problem with that.
Yeah, that's something they can do. They're extending the season by another week.
Asking stadiums to have more open dates.
Yeah,
and they're working on limiting and reducing the number of back-to-backs. Those are the areas where players have voiced frustration in the past with just being too exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Quick question coming in here from David in the comments, who asks if the NBA put some sort of rule. He calls it a dumb rule. I'm not going to put a positive or negative on it, but David says if the NBA did put some dumb rule in place, do you think players, teams, coaches, etc. would revolt? And would I support them if they did? I don't think they would revolt. I do think they would think of creative ways, as you mentioned, to get around it. I mean, at this point in the season, plenty of guys have nagging injuries that you could very easily say, "Oh, he's out with a hamstring or a knee or a turf toe or a lower body injury." If you want to talk about like hockey designations, it would be easy enough to point to any ailment that a player has and say, "Oh, well, he has to rest. Sorry, he's obviously hurting, like he's not at 100%. And I honestly do think, like, if you put in rules like that, teams are just going to find ways around it.
Yeah, but the rules need to be in place because you need to have some kind of protocol and structure around it. You can't just let teams do whatever they want. And having said that, I think that one thing that you've been concerned about is just how much the reach is, like how much control they are taking, and you don't want to have a situation where you've got
specifically my concern,
where you've got like a big brother who's the league, which really shouldn't be involved in the individual day-to-day business of each organization, each franchise within the league, basically telling and mandating what the teams do. Mm-hmm. Dennis Rodman had some thoughts about rest.
Dennis Rodman did. I love it when guys like Dennis Rodman and Ron Artest
back up to the surface.
Just kind of have comments about the game today.
It's not like the game that they played. It's not like their days.
It's so much more rough and so much harder when they were playing. But yeah, I just thought this was the cycle of dunking, and not literal dunking, this kind of metaphorical dunking on guys really escalated this week in a way I appreciate, where there's obviously the talk about LeBron James, and anytime anyone talks about LeBron James, they're going to compare him to Michael Jordan because that's just the comparison you make these days. But Rodman came out and said, "Oh, Michael Jordan never took games off. He played all the time," ignoring the whole year he took off because of
the 2 years he took off at 30.
But Dennis Rodman needed to come out and say something and said, "Hey, Jordan never would take games off." And my favorite development of the year was Steve Kerr then coming out and saying, Well, I don't really know where Rodman has space to talk. He took 15 games off every year because he was getting suspended.
Yeah.
And then even
going WWE Raw and
yeah, he was too busy trying to win the tag team championships over in WCW or something.
Charles Oakley called him out for his wedding dress.
And
Again,
then
the
Oakley,
NBA is fun.
Because Charles Oakley is a national treasure, he had to come out and take his shot at Rodman too, and I really appreciate that.
All right, should we get into a lightning round of make or miss?
We probably should. We went long, but I really had some things I had to talk about with the rest. So yeah, let's do some make or miss right now.
Okay, you're up first. The Warriors are making the right decision by bringing back Kevin Durant, who is supposed to play tomorrow. He's been cleared. He's been practicing. He's supposed to play. The Warriors have a few more games before they're in the playoffs. They've obviously already locked up the conference's top seed. Mm-hmm. Are they making the right decision by bringing him back? Why?
I'm going to give that a make because, I mean, obviously they don't have much to play for in these last couple of games, but I think it is crucial for them to get Kevin Durant integrated back into the flow of their offense, into their team, and you really don't want to risk that in a first-round matchup, even though there's not a huge threat from any of the teams who might end up at the 8th seed in the West. I think you might as well get him some run in these meaningless games at the end of the season. And obviously they're going to be smart with him. They're going to be cautious. They're going to make sure he doesn't hurt himself again. But yeah, just to get him back into the flow of the game so he's ready to go when the postseason begins.
My only concern on that is with last year with Steph Curry, who had he had sort of a lingering injury throughout the first couple rounds of the playoffs, and it was unclear if he had just taken a little bit more rest. Maybe it would have been 100% clear rather than coming back at 85, 90. But
yeah,
it's not like Kevin Durant needs the reps. I mean, you're right. He's going to come back and still be a good basketball player whenever
totally.
he comes back.
I always tend to defer to teams' medical staff on these. Obviously, if the medical staff felt like Kevin Durant was in need of more rest, they would say, no, man, just chill out. We'll bring you back in the first round. It'll be fine.
We are not
but they are
doctors.
also much smarter medical men than I am, so I'm going to let that to them. Your turn, Jimmy. Speaking of the Warriors, are they a better team without Kevin Durant? They scuffled a little bit when he went out, but quickly regained their momentum. And there's some arguments that Steph Curry should remain as the team's primary offensive option. Is the return of Kevin Durant going to disrupt that momentum that they have?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna. How do I parse through that? I'm gonna miss that they're a better team with Durant. But I think
with him,
I think
without him,
it's a miss that they're better with him.
So they're better without him.
So it's a make that they're better. Wait. No, it's a make that they're better with him, obviously.
Okay, all right. Just, hey, man, this is make or miss. Anything could happen.
Triple negatives there. No, but I think there is some nuance to it. They lost 5 of their first 7 when he went out. You and I talked about this. Why are Clay and Steph missing shots? Well, they've been used to the second best player in the league creating open shots for them, and the spacing's off and just the flow of the offense. Then they won 13 in a row and looked like the team that won 73 games last year. I don't think that. I mean, you're especially going to the playoffs when you need all of the firepower, all of the superstars you can get. They're obviously not better without Kevin Durant. But I do think there's something to be said for this team, the way it's constructed, the identity, the flow of this team. When Steph Curry is attacking, when Steph Curry is sort of the hard charging playmaker, rather than ceding to Kevin Durant, I think they're a better offense. I think they're a more efficient offense. That doesn't mean that Kevin Durant's going to sit in the corner, and just take spot up shots. But I do think that there's something to be said for Steph Curry rediscovering, I'm the reason this team has been the best team in the NBA for the last 3 years. I don't think Durant's going to come back and disrupt their momentum.
If there's one thing the Warriors are good at, it's incorporating a bunch of stars, and they've kind of showed that over the last couple of years.
Silicon Valley culture. Okay, so sort of a similar situation. Dwayne Wade for the Bulls is coming back.
Well, I mean, you could say it's similar, I guess.
Yeah, except for a much more fragmented team that it doesn't really know how to figure itself out. But the Bulls are coming back the Bulls are bringing Wade back. They've been 7-4 without him. Are they going to be better with Dwayne Wade?
I mean, I haven't been able to get a read on anything the Bulls have done at all this year because Rajon Rondo all of a sudden became, Rajon Rondo. No, totally.
He's good again.
It became good again, and I'm generally going to say that the Bulls probably are. They have a better chance to be good with Dwayne Wade because I would not trust the Rajon Rondo hot streak to carry over.
Jimmy Butler's been playing really good.
Jimmy Butler has been playing really good, and I do trust Jimmy Butler. The G is Jimmy G buckets. The G is forgets. I love Jimmy Butler, but even old Dwayne Wade, kind of unfortunately stepped slower, kind of broken down Dwayne Wade. He's the guy that they need for the playoffs if they are going to make and then make some noise in the playoffs. Wade is the guy, I think, who is going to organize that team, at least on the court, in a way that kind of no one else in their roster can. I mean, Rondo has never really been a super team player. There's been a lot of difficulty with him and his teammates and his coaches, and Jimmy Butler has not shown a lot of willingness to take on the leadership mantle either. So I'm definitely going to say that the Bulls are better. They have a better shot in the playoffs, let's say, with Wade than without. Next up for you, Jimmy. Another thing that kind of came out of the commissioners' conference today is that Charlotte, North Carolina, after proposing an amendment to their controversial quote-unquote bathroom bill, is back on the docket for a 2019 All-Star game. Is this the right call, make or miss?
That they're considering Charlotte?
That they should consider Charlotte.
Yeah, it's a make. I think that the NBA did an incredible. I think it was awesome to see the NBA take a social political stand like this. You just don't really. Again, one of the things that makes the NBA a little bit different. They have a perspective on things like this, and at least they, agree or disagree. It's nice to sort of know where they stand. The bill has been amended. It's not a gender discrimination bill anymore. What the NBA now is, and credit Adam Silver for this as well. He's giving the situation some nuance. He's not saying, "Oh yeah, absolutely." That now they took care of that bill, and we'll go ahead and throw you guys the All-Star game. He in his statement he said, we want to make sure that all of the facilities, all the venues that are sort of auxiliary around the NBA All-Star game, all the things that are the fans and players and the media are going to be interacting with aren't going to be experiencing any discrimination. And Charlotte's going to have to resubmit their application, bid just like everybody else. But you're not going to just blacklist this city now that the reason that you took the All-Star game away is sort of is being re-examined. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of your favorites, Lonzo Ball. He made
him and his dad still in the news, and we're not going to talk about.
Well, we sort of are.
I don't have the stomach to talk about LeVar Ball anymore.
Make or miss him hiring an agent instead of using his dad.
This is
make or miss.
This is such an obvious slam dunk. If you've seen anything LeVar Ball has said in the last couple of weeks, can you imagine him negotiating against an actual NBA team?
I want $1 billion.
He wants $1 billion. And actually, I don't know, Nike might give that family a really interesting shoe deal. We'll have more on that as it evolves. But, yeah, no, in any sport, when we've seen players try to act as their own agents or try to have, friends or family members act as agents, it just never goes well.
Usually it's not.
Hire a guy. Hire Jeff Schwartz if you want to be on the Bucks or work with Jason Kidd. Hire me. I took a
stats class.
I don't even need 10%. Give me 5%. I'll be your agent.
Macroeconomics.
I took an economics class in college. So that's definitely a make for me. Come back to you, Jimmy. We've seen a roller coaster Milwaukee team. The Milwaukee Bucks had the best record in the East in March. Shout out to Milwaukee and Milwaukee Home, which, by the way, one of my favorite clothing brands based out of Milwaukee. They're just quality in every way possible. But the Bucks have also, because my motto is never trust them, lost 3 in a row. Still haven't locked up their playoff spot. Could slide anywhere from 5 all the way down to 8, depending on tiebreakers.
Oh, and they're not even in, right?
They are not officially in. They could slide all the way out, even though there's a relatively low chance of that. But make or miss, is this the same old inconsistent Bucks that we've seen for years and years now?
I'm going to say it's a make because we just like you. We are scarred. We know what to expect, and now we've seen it happening again.
We don't know how to love anymore.
Now this season we won't dredge up Jabari, Chris Middleton, all the storylines that go into it. Obviously, it's an unconventional season. But they had the best record in the East in March. They played sparkling, beautiful basketball. They lost 3 in a row in April, and they're not just that they've lost 3 in a row because you can lose, you can have a losing streak. They've lost the last 2 games. We'll get rid of the Thunder game or the Pacers game on Thursday. They needed to win that game. That was a playoff game 6-7 type of. There was that kind of weight to that game, and if you can't win those games, then you really aren't consistently, predictably a good team. And so it'll be interesting. They've got the 76ers, then they've got Charlotte. Both of those teams are kind of trying to lose right now. 76ers definitely are. And then they've got Boston, who might be resting. They're probably, they're almost certainly still in, but they are definitely not, they're not going in the way that they were looking a week ago.
For sure.
Okay, well, real quick on the Bucks follow-up. There was a Ringer article today. Chris Middleton is secretly one of the best players in the NBA. Do you make or miss on that? And specifically on the best players in the NBA. We love him in Milwaukee, but best players in the NBA?
It's undeniable that Chris Middleton is a very valuable player in the NBA, and I have to say my words carefully because there is a whole contingent of people on Twitter who are going to come after me. I think Chris Middleton has the potential to be one of the, let's say, top 20 players in the NBA. And last year he showed a lot of that. Even this year coming back, he's still shooting almost 42% from three, playing very good defense, and being kind of that all-around wing that the Bucks need. I don't think he's quite at the... He's definitely secretly, he's been low-key for his entire career, and has really been under the radar. But he's not quite to that best players in the NBA moniker. I think, he can obviously get there. He's still relatively young, with 25 years old, 26.
So you're
maybe.
making and missing this one.
I'm hedging. I'm going to say more miss than make.
That one's like rolling. That one's like spinning around the hoop, and
exactly.
we don't know whether
it's doing the old toilet bowl thing.
Yeah, and we're cutting away before we find out whether it's
in. It's a miss right
in.
now with potential to be a make next year. So ask me in 12 months.
Great.
And our final make or miss. Much was made about the New Orleans Pelicans acquiring DeMarcus Cousins, but they are officially out of the playoffs for this year, even though that move seemed to be an all-in push for the playoffs. Make or miss, Jimmy, are they going to be able to turn it around next year, or are they going to have to blow it up?
I'm going to say miss. They haven't looked good at all. They've had enough time now. They've had a month and a half to sort of figure out what they want to do. It's not like a brand new. They have two of the best best big men in the league. Mm-hmm. It's not like they have to find all these disparate parts and figure out how they work. It's like no, give it to those guys. And those guys haven't been as good together as we thought they were going to be. So I'm going to miss it. It's also kind of funny if they aren't good next year after making this big deal and having two of the best players in the NBA on the team.
It's. I mean, New Orleans has been a factory of sadness for. Sorry, Cleveland.
Sadness.
They're gonna steal your factory of sad. Yeah, Bourbon Street of sadness. They're gonna steal Cleveland's.
What are you watching this weekend? I know you got some games. I'm going to be in New York, probably traveling most of the time, but you're going to be watching a few games, I think.
As has been established, I really love watching potential playoff matchups. So I'm keeping an eye on the Heat at Raptors tonight, actually. Tune into that, but that could be really interesting if Miami does creep up into that 6-7 spot. They could be a matchup for the Raptors that I'm super intrigued with because Miami this year has been low key one of the great stories in the Eastern Conference. Also, I'm a golf guy, so the Masters is going on right now. Shout out to my guy Charlie Hoffman, Sergio Garcia, staying at the top of the leaderboard. Even if you're not a golf fan, just check out the Masters for a little bit. It's the Super Bowl of golf, basically, and it's worth at least paying attention to it. I'm not going to win people over to golf because, listen, I know the score, but it's something that's really close to my heart. And Sunday at the Masters, I think, is one of the great events in sports. Anything for you, Jimmy? I know you are going to be traveling, but you can probably catch a game or two.
Yeah, I'll probably be watching Clippers Spurs tomorrow. I want to see if the Clippers flaming dumpster continues to be lit on fire. And I actually don't have any more Nikola Jokic dad jokes.
No,
so
you use. I mean, you started off with a burner, so I can totally understand that.
That's probably good though. I think people are done with those jokes.
That's fair. You have to use them in moderation. Well, that is going to be it for the Double Dribble show today. Thank you, everyone, so very much for watching. You can always check out all the great shows on the Brew Sports Network. At Brew Sports on Facebook, at Brew Sports Net on Twitter. I believe we have brewsportsnet.com. Producer Baxter's telling me, yes, we do, in fact. You can catch all of our great shows live and recorded there. And you can definitely catch the Double Dribble next week at 5 p.m. Central right here on the Brew Sports Net. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you later.